Hey y'all, how are you doing? Oh, my screen looks a little weird. How are you doing? I am great. Thank you so much for asking. It's me, Kim, and I'm back for another video. It's been a minute. Quick updates. My first update is I understand why Michelle Obama is a braids all the time bougie black woman. I'm about to be a braids all the time bougie black woman. It's so easy. I am dreading going back to microlinks and straight hair. Even though I love microlinks, I think I have the best stylist in the world. She can cut layers. You know, a lot of the girls today can't cut layers. Okay. The hair girls who learn how to do hair from YouTube can't cut layers. But I am not looking forward back. I'm not looking forward to the maintenance. Okay. Um Other little things before we jump into it. This is, ooh, you can't see it there. I'm sorry. This eats. This is my abortion is healthcare. Oh, I'm sorry. It's so good. It fucking eats. This is the merch. Let me put a link in the chat. It's shopknf.com. So cute. And I will put it in the chat. Because abortion is healthcare. Adorbs, literally. And what else is on the top of my mind? I am committing to going out every single weekend until the end of the year. So it's gonna be an adventure filled the rest of the year. What else do I have before we jump into it? While we're waiting for people to file in decent and in order, I can give my first thoughts on Kamala Harris's closing argument. The first thing I have to address is the images are just so good. It looked great. I know that that's not the most important thing, but I have been consistently impressed by the visuals, the imagery. It looked like a movie. I'm sorry, liberals just have better taste. I, they just do. Liberals have better taste. Put that on. Send that to Pod Save America, okay? Pod Save America needs to put that on a shirt. Um, Look, it's Donald Trump is horrible. We can't do 4 more years of Donald Trump. Ooh, actually, while we're waiting, we can have a little bit of a moment of levity.
So busy trying to convince me that Kamala's not the perfect person. She's not a perfect Patty. She got her dirt, blah, 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 blah. She locked up black men. Let me let you know something. Trump could have been running against a motherfucking apple. And guess who I'm voting for? They can put a piece of tilapia on the stage. And I'm voting blue. Like they said on Twitter. It's either this AKA or the KK.
That is real. Look, I have real serious critiques of Kamala Harris, and we will talk about them all next week. But right now, one thing I know for sure is there is no world in which 4 more years of Donald Trump results in better or safer lives for any individual or community that I care about. There's no marginalized community that will be better off after 4 years of Donald Trump. Okay. We are currently facing a binary choice. It's Trump or Harris. Am I 100% satisfied with Harris? No, but you know what? Adulthood says there's two options. You choose the best option. And let me just say, I am all for a principled anti-imperial stance. I get it. I totally respect it as long as we're not saying things that are just not true. And something that is just not true is that both sides are the same, that both parties are the same. It's just not true. So make your anti-imperialist argument, make your anti-carceral state argument, but don't say that because it's not true. The other day, as we all know, I am a touchy-feely crybaby Pisces. And not too long ago, I was reading an article from ProPublica about the story of Amber Thurman. If you follow politics or Kamala over the last couple of months, you've probably heard the name Amber Thurman. She was a Georgia woman who died after having a medical abortion. All of the fetal tissue inside of her uterus was not expelled. She ended up going into sepsis and she went to the hospital because she needed the fetal tissue in her uterus that was not completely expelled to be excavated because it was deteriorating. It was getting necrosis and making her sick. She became septic and ultimately died while waiting for the hospital to decide whether or not it was legal to perform a D&C on her. That D&C would have saved her life. So Amber Thurman left behind children who don't have a mom because of these horrible, draconian, deadly anti abortion laws. Look, we can talk about abstract death and we can talk about literal death, okay? And what we know to be true is there's a really good chance that if somebody different were elected in November of 2016, Amber Thurman and so many other women like her would still be alive. There is a direct link between November 2016 and Amber Thurman dying waiting for a life-saving medical procedure in 2022. Direct link. Direct link. So while you're making your anti-Harris arguments, all I am asking, I'm actually not even trying to pressure you to do what I think is the most responsible, caring thing. Do whatever you do, that's your decision. I'm just asking to be honest. That's it. That is it. I also thought about how I don't know if Amber ever voted in her life. I don't know who she voted for, but I do know that tens of millions of people participated in making a decision that led to her death. I don't know, dude. Y'all do what you want. Just make good arguments while you do what you want. Make good arguments. Okay. Um my close friend almost died the same way. This is real. People are really being harmed. All right. Kamala Harris is not a leftist. We know. We know. Kamala Harris is not a leftist. No, she's not. No. There will not be a US president who is a leftist. I don't know what y'all are gonna. I don't know, dude. All right. It's difficult for me to understand. Look, it's difficult for me to understand because we went through this. We did it before. We did it. Now we're here. Anyways, let's move on. Let's move on because I can't. Hey y'all, how are you doing? I'm great. Thank you so much for asking. It's me, Kim, and I'm back for another video. Today, I am here to talk about one of the most discussed stories of this election cycle. I have my notes here because I bought a teleprompter, but for some reason it's not working. It's very hard to work teleprompters. The big story right now, if you pay attention to political media, is the historic gender divide. If you pay attention to dominant media, you know that in almost any polling that you encounter, there is a big gap between who likely voters in the United States are going to be supporting, and it breaks down by gender. According to the most recent CBS News YouGov poll, 55% of female likely voters are supporting Kamala Harris, and 54% of male likely voters are supporting Kamala Harris. Why is that maybe a good thing for Harris? Because women make up a larger share of the electorate in the United States. We just we just got to hope that the ladies turn out. I follow a longtime Democratic pollster named Celinda Lake. I follow her everywhere she goes. She's on all these podcasts and on the YouTube channels, and she has a refrain that she repeats over and over again. And she says that Harris has to win women by more than she loses men. Y'all keep your fingers crossed, right? Simple math. Now, the gender divide is deeply embedded in electoral politics in the United States. But for me, the real story of the gender divide in the 2024 election is not just about the relationship between gender and political affiliation. It's about the relationship between age, gender, and political affiliation. Polling from a variety of sources, including the CBS News YouGov poll that I mentioned before, NBC News. I just saw a Yale poll. There's a Harvard Youth poll, New York Times, Siena. I don't know, you name it, Pew, Gallup, you name it. They all say the same thing, that right now, for people under 30, voters between the ages of 18 and 29, young men and young women are more divided than they have ever been on the presidential candidate that they plan to support. I think we should expect between 65% and 70% of women between the ages of 18 and 29 to vote for Kamala Harris. And generally, in those polls, the spread between men and women in their Harris support is 30 points. I think I saw in the Yale poll today something like 40 something points. A lot of young men are voting for Donald Trump, or they say they're voting for Donald Trump. That's the tricky thing here, because young men, ooh, young people are pretty unreliable voters. I will affirm, because somebody has corrected me about this before. In the last election, young people really showed up to vote for comatose Joe Biden, but it's fine. It's fine. Y'all really did what you had to do to vote for Sleepy Joe in 2020. But generally, not the most reliable voting demographic, particularly not young men. That's the thing. If the Trump campaign, if their campaign's success hinges on the lowest propensity voters turning up, that seems shaky, but we don't know, right? The lowest propensity voters are also some of the angriest voters in our current electorate. So we don't know. I truly have no idea what is going to happen next week. Who knows? Okay. So this gender gap is fascinating to me, not just because of what I do for a living. Clearly, I'm going to be interested in what the girls are doing. Got to keep up with my girls. Auntie Kim has to keep up. I'm interested in it just as a sociocultural phenomenon, but I am keeping up with it because I'm curious and maybe a little bit concerned about what these trends portend. We know that our electoral preferences, our political identities are hardened in post adolescence. There's this idea that people universally become more conservative as they get older. That's just not true. And we certainly don't see that in the election polling data that we currently have. If you dig into a lot of those crosstabs, you see that Gen Xers, people who came of age during the Reagan era, are often voting more conservatively than baby boomers, than older people. And if we take a step back from the US case, the US situation, there is polling in Europe that indicates that young men have more conservative attitudes about gender than older men. We can have so many conversations about what is going on there. I have lots of thoughts and I've read lots about that, but that is not what we are here to talk about. We're here to talk about the girls because something that has irked me while I have been doing my gender gap deep dives is how rarely the needs, desires, preferences of young women are explored in any of these pieces. Often, the headline, the centerpiece is, why are young men voting for Trump? Why are so many young men becoming more conservative? What do they see in them? Do they need mentors? But in reality, the actual story here, and Jamel Bowie articulated this wonderfully in the New York Times over the weekend. The real story here is young women between the ages of 18 and 29 are becoming way more liberal. Way more liberal. Young men are becoming a little bit more conservative, but the girls are saying, in the words of YG, fuck Donald Trump. So a couple months ago, I talked about what was spurring so many white women to move toward Kamala Harris. And I hit what's generally called the diploma divide really, really hard because that is one of the great political decisions, that is one of the great political boundaries, demarcators, dividing lines in American politics, whether or not you went to college. But I actually learned during my deep dive that young women with and without degrees are saying fuck Donald Trump overwhelmingly. I was mistaken because generally the Democratic Party has become the party of the formally educated, we should say. As you get older, the more education you have, the more likely you are to be, we'll say, a progressive voter, a liberal voter, the more likely you are to vote for the Democratic Party and not the Republican Party. And that hasn't always been that way. In fact, we're in the midst of a real political realignment, and I guess we'll have to talk about that next week too, because things are shifting with regard to the two-party system in a way that is pretty scary for Democrats and traditional Republicans. All right. Um, so when I was thinking about why so many young women are expressing much more progressive or liberal attitudes than previous generations, it's, yes, a fuck Donald Trump, but it's also about the normalization of progressive gender ideology. These are young women who grew up in a world where there's the expectation that we should aspire to equity. There is an expectation that we should aspire to justice. After all, these are the young women who grew up seeing Beyonce perform at the VMAs in front of the big feminism sign in 2014. Is Beyonce's feminism my feminism? No. And we can have, conversations about that. We can't have a conversation about that. But the idea, right? Just think about, in a post-Roe world, right? Let's go back to the pre-Roe world where the idea that women are equal to men, that they deserve equal access in the marketplace of ideas, equal access to educational and professional opportunities, that those things were considered radical. That's 50 years ago, 60 years ago. My mom was alive doing things, A lot has changed. A lot has changed. So people are inclined to talk about men, young men, shifting towards Donald Trump for all kinds of reasons. Donald Trump is malignant. He is a malignant force in US politics. He is a cretin. Often, when people try to explore young men's political attitudes, they do so with a sense of disbelief and shock. How could these men who've grown up in this world, seeing young women sitting right beside them in class, seeing their mothers go to work, seeing women leaders, how could they identify with a vile misogynist? Well, it could be that they're identifying with a vile misogynist because they've sat right next to the girls throughout their entire lives and the girls are beating them. That is another conversation for another day. We're not centering men here. The other thing is, young men really are struggling. Not too long ago, I think it was the end of September, I saw a write up in the Wall Street Journal that indicated that 20%, 19 to 20% of men between the ages of 25 and 34 live with a parent. Okay, I don't want to be too judgy or shamey here because life is hard, but that is wild. That's wild because we're not talking about 18 to 25. I'm 35 years old. I'm 35. One in five people, one in five men, up to the 25 to 34 is living with. I just think that's, yeah. Yeah, they're down bad, crying at the gym, as Taylor Swift would say. So the rage makes sense, and we have to pay attention to the rage because they are so loud about the rage. And sometimes the rage of men is dangerous. But I'm a girl's girl, but I guess I'm not a girl's girl because I'm an auntie. So I'm an auntie's girl. I'm a girl's auntie. I guess I am a girl's auntie. I do have two girl aunts. Yeah. So I am deeply interested in why the girls are angry. Why are young women angry? Why are they frustrated? What, besides just the figure, the shadow, the specter of a disgustingly misogynistic Donald Trump, what is prompting them to be not only so progressive, but also so dogmatic in their politics? The other thing that we see in the data around young women, Gen Z, and the young millennials is they don't want to be your friend if you are conservative. They don't want to date conservative men. They are much more likely to say they don't want to have children, they don't care about getting married, they don't care about dating, especially if they identify as heterosexual. There's something happening in their politics where they're saying this ideology, this worldview, participating in these actions is so disgusting to me. I don't want to be associated with that at all. And I just don't think enough time has been spent there. So Kamala Harris, if she's elected next week, I don't know what's going to, I truly don't know. I truly don't know, you guys. I have been a super consumer of political media and analysis. I have subscribed to so many politics substacks. I probably pay $100 a month in politics substacks at this point. And I don't know what's going to happen next week. There's this idea that women or people of color are particularly susceptible to identity politics, but Kamala being potentially the first multiracial woman president is not it. Even though I don't have a problem with identity politics, and most people don't, people who express a disdain for identity politics just don't like women, and they don't like Black people, and they don't like women or Black people expressing affinity for somebody who shares their identity. Because please, the freaking evangelical Christians love identity politics. White men love identity politics. Donald Trump had Hulk Hogan at the fucking Madison Square Garden. Who the fuck is Hulk Hogan for? What political analysis is Hulk Hogan offering? Please. Okay, sorry. Let me get back on track. um, the desire to see Kamala win is not just about their affinity for her gender identity, even though if it is about that, it's fine. We talk about abortion over and over again, and that comes up a lot when young women discuss who they plan to vote for. But a lot more attention should be paid to all of the political and cultural events that have pushed young women left. Another revelation that I had recently was how sad I am for young women who came of age in the Trump years. Truly. As an Obama presidency millennial, I was literally 18 years old when Barack Obama was elected, and I talk all the time about seeing people run into the streets in Harvard Square and dance on cars when Barack Obama was elected. And that, critiques of Obama aside, that is a foundational political memory for me. We really failed these kids who came of age in the Trump years and in pandemic years. Of course you're angry. Of course you're frustrated. Of course it's fuck Donald Trump. And shame on all of us old people. We really fucked it up for them. So in order to go deeper on this, just real quickly, just a quick little primer, I wanted to start by playing some clips from a recent episode of the New York Times podcast, The Daily. They explored the gender divide. The title of the episode is called The Gender Election. I will say I have some problems with that episode. I have problems with the framing. It was, again, an example of framing this electoral gender divide in a way that I think privileges the needs, desires, and grievances of young men. And I don't think that that's responsible. I know, but we're gonna listen to a couple of clips and have a conversation about it. It's a conversation between Sabrina Tavernisi and New York Times reporter Claire Kane Miller.
So you have this kind of new gap that was not true for young people, say, a generation ago.
Or even an election ago. And the really fascinating thing is that the biggest change has been among young women. They have always leaned left, but just in the last 8 years, they have begun leaning left much more than they had been before. It's a really sharp rise in their liberal identification, which political scientists told me you don't really see this kind of change so quickly among a group of people. And it's true of all young women. There's no difference by education, even though education usually affects how people vote. There's no difference by race. Really, when you look at young women in America today, across categories, they're moving left.
And what about men?
So men are moving somewhat to the right. It's been a little overblown, this idea that all young men are backing Trump. But there has been some movement to the right. Men without college degrees who finished high school or may have their GED, they're more likely to be backing Trump.
Got it. So for women, it's just everybody. But for men, the change is happening really just among guys who didn't go to college.
For the most part.
Okay, so this is incredibly interesting to me, Claire.
Yes, this is incredibly interesting to me, Claire. It's just so interesting. Like the standard format of podcasts, the conversational format is super fascinating to me. When there was an assumption that feminism was on the march, that we were consistently moving socially and culturally toward progress, there was a normalized idea of anti-feminist backlash. And for me, Rush Limbaugh, oh, I'm trying not to be nasty about dead people. Let me not take it too far. To me, Rush Limbaugh is an exemplar of the quote unquote anti feminist backlash. He was a talk radio show host, incredibly popular, and grew to prominence in the 80s and 90s when the men were activated against women gaining institutional power. 1992 was deemed the year of the woman. That's when so many Democratic women were elected to Congress. 1992 was Bill Clinton elected, and he brought along Hillary Clinton, a loud and proud out feminist. And after there were rumors about Bill laying it low and spreading it wide, there's a very famous interview with Bill and Hillary, I believe on the Today Show, where she said something to the effect of, "I'm not Tammy Wynette, stand by your man." And she said something else controversial about, "I'm not baking cookies. I'm not at home baking cookies." And the anti-feminists were outraged. The woman haters, the misogynists, the pygmies were outraged. Really, Hillary? Look, Hillary has some problems, but she did what she needed to do for the feminist girls in the 90s. Okay. But back to Rush Limbaugh. I love this, just being able to rip and just say whatever. Back to Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh, a big part of his ability to grow an audience so quickly and to become so influential is he embodied the anger, the disgust of the men who felt that like they were being displaced and marginalized in society. The men who hated feminists, hated feminism, and wanted to articulate that hate, express that disgust as crudely and disturbingly as they possibly could. Rush Limbaugh famously coined the term feminazi because he hated abortion rights activism, and the feminists were feminazis because abortion is a holocaust. Get it? Get it? That's him. I remember personally his attacks on Sandra Fluke, a grad school student who testified in front of Congress in order to advocate for broadening access to contraception. That was 12 years ago, 13 years ago. He drugged that lady through the mud. He did end up apologizing because Barack Obama stepped in and there was just enough pressure. But that's not usually how it went. He got away with saying the worst shit in the world for years. And not only did he get away with it, but Rush Limbaugh, shortly before his death in 2020, was awarded a Presidential Medal of Freedom or Honor. Freedom? By guess who? Donald Trump. And if I had to do any kind of theorizing, I'd say that what we are seeing from the young women is anti-feminist backlash. Political awakenings often happen when people are able to connect the dots between how the interpersonal bigotry that they witness, the feeling of discomfort and unease that they experience while navigating through a misogynistic world, when you can connect that to institutional misogyny, institutional sexism, and see clearly how that limits your freedom, how that harms people. And of course, we're going to end up talking about abortion later on. Okay. Donald Trump burst onto the scene. Was it, what year did he come with the birther stuff? 2012? Was that the birther stuff? How long have we been dealing with Donald Trump? Y'all put it in the chat. But just the cockroach of American politics will not go away. And they're just tired of the political and cultural sexism. Let's move on to the next clip from the episode.
You said that young women have taken really an entirely different message from the recent years. Tell me about that. What message did they take?
So remember, like we talked about, this was the era when girls were raised to believe that they could do anything, that they could be anything. There was almost this idea that the work of feminism had been done and equality had been achieved.
When did you personally start paying attention to politics?
I would say in 2016. Definitely had my eyes opened in college, I think, because of the 2016 election.
And then came 2016, which was Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton.
I was really, really excited. I have always really liked Hillary Clinton. I think she's more than qualified. She articulates herself very well. That felt like a real moment where I had some ideas about, justice and equality and human rights, and then seeing the things that Trump was saying and how people were responding to them at his rallies made me feel very shocked and concerned. It was just the way that they tore Hillary Clinton down.
Of course, we all remember some of the things that Trump said.
Just things like she's a disgusting, vile woman. People just started really, really hating on her. It's not just Trump. It was the conservatives in my life, the way that they would talk about her and insult her. It was disturbing to watch.
And there were the Access Hollywood tapes.
Some of the things that he was saying about, grab her by the pussy, or like you can say whatever to women.
And then Hillary Clinton lost.
Seeing Trump elected made me realize, oh no, this is how most people feel about, women and people of color in our country. And that was really disillusioning.
And in the interviews that we did with these young women, they said that was really a turning point for them.
I was 17 that election. I was becoming an adult, like literally about to turn 17. I wasn't old enough to vote, but I was old enough to watch what was going on during that election. Seeing things change in such a huge way at this time definitely opened my eyes politically and made me understand that I had things to be angry about.
And political science has shown us that what happens politically when you're around 18 is really formative in your views. And this is what these women experienced. And then
also, Me Too, I think, was a...
Man, honestly, that makes me so sad. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Touchy-feely Kim is so sad that there's a generation of... It makes me really sad that there's a generation of now adult young women who were inundated with not just Donald Trump's attacks on womanhood and femaleness, and I'm not even particularly worried about Hillary Clinton, the individual, but just creating the aura, creating the space, the permission structure everybody likes to talk about for those kinds of ideas to be seen as natural and normal and accepted and fun. I'm a grown person. I knew it was wrong. I knew I would be okay. But it makes me really, really, my heart hurts for people who saw that as you're transitioning into womanhood. It makes me really sad that we have another generation of young women who will view womanhood through the lens of burden, oppression, limited rights, normalized sexism and misogyny. We really failed those fucking kids. We really did. Not me. but white people did. Okay. So more on the political awakening. I've talked about how formative a political memory it was to see Obama elected in 2008. I think that is a big reason why older millennials, young Gen X have a maybe pathological attachment to the Obamas. The Obamas are the most popular figures in American politics. I'm not saying it's just us, but I certainly am of a cohort where it was normal to say stuff like, I'm a Michelle looking for my Barack. Oh my God. You guys. Ew. Not me. Not me. I'm beating the charges, okay? But if you're 35, if you're between the ages of 35 and 42, you probably had a Facebook status that said, "Where's my Barack?" You probably did. Oh my God. It's actually sick. It's actually sick, okay? Millennial brain rot for sure because of the Obama. For sure, millennial brain rot. But there's a certain kind of joy and pleasure and fun that we were able to have when engaging with these representative figures, people who you felt understood your experience, and if they didn't completely understand your experience, they at the very least sympathized or empathized with your experience. Now, we can have some other kinds of conversations about policy, but not today. Not today. The other thing that I think really impacted people my age, I think a lot about how I know a lot of anti-imperial, anti-war machine middle millennials and young Gen Xers because of coming of age. I mean, I remember being in 7th grade homeroom and seeing planes fly into the Twin Towers. And then, of course, we have the catastrophes of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. And then as I got older, late teens, early 20s, late teens, we get the financial collapse, the great financial crisis, and Occupy Wall Street and all of that. And even the high earning millennials and young Gen Xers that I know have a healthy skepticism of US financial systems because of that. For sure. But there's also a lot of probably too much Obama simping. Obama simps. Obama simps. Okay. So, about this, despite my overwhelming sadness for the ways that we failed girls transitioning into young women during a really pivotal time in their life with regard to the stuff that they were exposed to in politics and culture, the future, to my mind, looks incredibly bright. I started For Harriet as a blog because I felt like there wasn't enough online feminist space to talk about progressive Black women's ideas. Not that I was the first person to ever talk about them, but that there just wasn't enough digital space, digital real estate to do it in a non-academic forum. And I, got invited places and, gave talks and gave my first keynote when I was like 24 because not because I'm like some genius, but because the idea of a non-academic Black feminist blog at the time was novel. I love and am obsessed and heartened by all of the feminist girls on YouTube, on Tumblr, on Twitter, on Instagram, doing your analysis, doing your theorizing. I promise you guys, the internet was not like this 11 years ago. The internet was not like this a decade ago. It just was not. It just wasn't. It was not. And we could probably, if you pay attention to the way that social media has changed, the way that even mainstream media has changed, you could probably predict where we are electorally as well. I've been on a ton of college campuses over the last decade. The transformation in the way that young women articulate their politics is astounding to me. They are so clear-eyed and thoughtful. They've done the reading. Okay. Like, people are really naming old school theorists, old school thinkers, but also contemporary thinkers and theorists. They understand the stakes. So many young women come up to me. I expect the 30-year-old girls to do it because y'all are my girls. I am astounded when it's somebody in their 20s. I'm astounded. I'm taken aback. I'm surprised when I go to a university to give a talk and somebody tells me they've been reading for Harriet or watching the video since they were in middle school. I'm Auntie Kim for real. That's why y'all can call me Auntie. Call me Auntie. Hey, it is what it is. Because I know I've just been around for so long. Okay. The other thing that I was thinking about is, I'm supposed to be eliminating my space fillers. I'm sorry. Is that my first I hope it is. I've been practicing. I have a whole essay written that may or may not get published. Who knows? About what the Barbie movie and the extraordinary success of the Barbie movie actually represents is how normal and mundane run-of-the-mill feminist politics have become in Western culture. That's the actual triumph of the Barbie movie. Even though I do think Greta Gerwig did her thing, I think after revisiting the Barbie movie, I think it is actually stunning. I fronted on it. I did front on the Barbie movie. But going back and rewatching it a month ago, I said, oh, crap. I was fronting on Greta Gerwig. Anyways, what is most remarkable about that film is how ideas that would have been seen as transgressive, discussions about patriarchy in a movie that grossed over $1 billion. So much work, cultural work, political work has gone into making that weird only to weirdos. When Ben Shapiro was having a meltdown and threatening to burn Barbies, people looked at him like, you're a fucking weirdo. But we don't get to that point culturally without so much work. It's political work. It's filmmaking. It's television. It's writing. And shout out to Laura Mulvey and the male gaze. Okay. Anyways, the last thing I wanted to say about this, just so we can just put a pin on how impressed and stunning it is that we are at this place where I can go on TikTok so easily and find countless young women theorizing their asses off, articulating their asses off, quoting thinkers and theorists that I didn't even get into until I was in my 30s. I remember when I was the political action chair of the Association of Black Harvard Women when I was a sophomore in college. And I would say, hey, Black women, y'all are talking about all of the shit that is piled onto your backs in the world and with these men. Have you ever considered that it doesn't have to be this way? Have you ever considered that there are people who have theorized and articulated and done the work and done the organizing that could potentially give you some ideological frame through which to understand your experiences? And some people got it, like some people were into it. But generally, when I would say, as a sophomore in college, Black women, free yourselves, even my closest friends would be like, okay, girl, we're not getting free. Okay. Like, we're not. or not this being Kimberly's feminist grievance hour, or sitting in a Black religion class, and I won't name the professor because I really did like her. A small Black religion seminar reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, and we're having a discussion about the book and the ideas Malcolm X articulated in the book, and raising my hand and being like, is this misogynistic to anybody else? Isn't it a little, don't y'all feel a little weird about some of these ideas? And just getting talked over. Because I'm the crazy one. It is misogyny. It was clearly misogyny. It clearly was. But now, if you point that out, you're not the crazy one. And I love that for y'all. I love that for y'all. Okay. So thank the internet, thank social media, the anti-misogyny feminist curriculum that so many of us had to spend so much time searching out. We had to build up spaces that didn't exist. Those spaces have proliferated in the past decade to a decade and a half. And young women have gotten they've gotten an accelerated course of study. And so y'all are just way more advanced in articulations of gender than people my age. Behind on some other stuff. But with the gender shit, y'all really got it for sure. I definitely have some concerns about some norms among young people. I think most people's dopamine receptors are fried. And so it's leading to some psychological and emotional and intellectual issues. But with regard to this kind of analysis, spot on. And so despite my concerns, I have nothing but sympathy and empathy for y'all. Let's move on to the next clip.
Also, Me Too, I think, was a big moment.
Soon after Donald Trump was elected, the Me Too movement happened.
I personally identified with Me Too because me too, and I feel like everyone I know has a story.
Which was, of course, spurred on by the revelations about Harvey Weinstein, but led to this realization that sexual harassment and sexual assault in the workplace was really quite common.
As a young girl with a Twitter account, it was really grounding to understand that some of the harassment maybe that I'd experienced even at a really young age wasn't just something that I was experiencing.
And the women that I talked to, said that this continued to be this shock for them.
Seeing online, this is something that can happen to you at any age. And it's kind of just part of the experience of being a woman.
They were entering the real world. They were becoming adults at a time when it was becoming extremely clear that, in fact, sexism was not in the least a thing of the past, and that the world was not at all the way that they were told it would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Y'all have so much more language to recognize and articulate the dangers. Or actually, let me not go into my critiques. This is not Kimberly critiques Gen Z feminism hour, but I will just say that the progressive Gen Z feminist girls should be very proud of yourselves in many ways. I will save my critiques for another video. And I think it is really great that after Roe fell, there was real visible action in the way of organizing around abortion funds. It really stood out to me that Olivia Rodrigo, one of the biggest musical artists in the world, was explicitly saying during her world tour that she was raising money for abortion funds, that abortion is a critical issue. You have little girls in there. And the conversation about abortion is not safe, legal, and rare. Oh my God. Safe, legal, and rare fucked us over so badly. Don't get me started on this. I have been a pro abortion extremist for a long time. For a long time, meaning get an abortion for whatever reason you want. Let me tell you, when I was saying get an abortion for whatever reason you want in the suburbs of Oklahoma and North Texas, it wasn't great. So, to see different kinds of artists, big pop stars, actors, activists, the girlies on TikTok be so clear-eyed about what is at stake, what the risks are. My heart. Let's talk more about abortion.
In the political calendar that is likely, I imagine, to be meaningful to the women you talked to was the Dobbs abortion case, right? June 2022, when the federal protection for abortion went away. And, I remember for years interviewing young women, and they didn't really think that much about abortion or talk that much about abortion. But as soon as Roe fell, suddenly this was really a big issue for them.
That's right.
I'd read about Roe v. Wade in history books and kind of thought to myself, wow, that's so crazy. Well, that feels like just a given. Anybody can get an abortion. Oh, I was shocked, to be honest. I never thought that it was actually on the table. Seeing American history go backwards was really surreal.
This was the thing that took them from their eyes being opened about women's rights and the unfinished work of feminism to really connecting it to political activism.
Like, okay, if the president, whoever was president, got us into this mess, maybe the next president could get us out of it.
They told me that this was the first time, as young adults, that they realized who you vote for could have a direct impact on your rights.
The political climate towards women is scary. I feel like it's an attack on women, to be completely honest with you.
And they said it made them realize that, as one woman told me, Donald Trump's words, people sometimes say that he just talks and that he doesn't mean them, and that Dobbs was a clear example of how words can have real life effects.
Yeah. I am consistently so shocked by the faux confusion, concern, trolling, outrage about the direction the abortion conversation has taken. To me, this is completely predictable. I can very clearly articulate why the issue of abortion is so radicalizing. I personally have never had an abortion, but let me tell ya, well, I'm 35 now, so I mean, so crazy. Let me just say, because I have been saying this for years. You know what's wild? Being at an age where getting pregnant naturally would be more surprising than getting pregnant, right? Like it's a wild time. It's a wild time. I mean, 35-year-olds get pregnant every day. I know. But it's just like if you go to your gynecologist and like they show you like the fertility, like when does your fertility like when does it peak and then when does it like being at the point in the fertility chart where it's like, oh wow, your egg, like that's impressive. Like if I actually got pregnant. But anyways, I'm saying that I've been saying ever since I started having sex that if there's an unplanned pregnancy, getting an abortion would not be a second thought. The reason why the abortion conversation is so radicalizing is because we see over and over again that access to abortion, and fuck safe, legal, and rare, broad-based access to abortion with very few restrictions is critical in saving women's lives. Women who don't want to have kids, people with uteruses who don't want to have kids, women who don't want to have kids, women who do want to have children. Access to prompt, professional, safe abortion care is critical to our health. And we articulate that over and over again. And there are so many stories about women who their lives or their fertility or their babies were saved, or their future was saved by access to easily available and safe abortion care. And the conversation returns to, well, if you don't want to have an abortion, then don't be a slut or a hoe. And we can point to all of these stories like Amanda Zurovsky and her husband appeared at the Harris rally on Friday. There was a Black woman who appeared at the Harris rally. Her name was Andrea. I don't think that she shared her last name, who would have died if she had not had access to abortion care. We have the story of women who have actually died, like Amber Thurman, whose lives would have been saved. But instead of acknowledging that, we have to continually have a conversation about don't be a slut, don't be a hoe, you won't need it. And we're like, wait, what's not clicking? What's not clicking? What's not clicking? I think that as a pro-abortion extremist, you should get an abortion for whatever reason you want, whenever you want to get it. That is me. Because once I say it's my right to interfere with your choice and the conversations that you have with your doctor, that immediately introduces potentially fatal danger. Okay? That's why I am a pro-abortion extremist. One, forced birth is bad for children. Okay? It creates an environment in which infant mortality rises notably. It creates an environment in which child abuse increases significantly, but it's also dangerous for the people who have to carry the kids. So my position has been, it's none of my fucking business. And a totally normal position for the lovers of liberty is that it is normal and acceptable for the state to intervene in decisions that should be made between a woman or a person with a fetus or a person carrying a fetus and their doctor. That's insane. And despite all of the conversations about the risks, it comes down to wanting to punish the bad women. And when you realize that the pro forced birth extremists want so badly to punish the bad women that they're willing to let good women die, you say, oh, abortion's for everybody. Because it's not actually about being good. It's not actually about making the right choices or being responsible. We got to make sure that none of the bad girls get away. And I also have to tell you, put my cards on the table here. I don't give a fuck about any of those save the babies anti-abortion arguments. Oh, this video is getting demonetized. I don't give a fuck. Because you know why? Because the religious right only took up anti-abortion activism because they were down so bad politically in a post-civil rights America. If they could have still maintained their political power by being segregationists in the 70s, they wouldn't have transitioned into anti-abortion activism. Look it up. Maybe we'll do a video about that later, but that's the truth. Ronald Reagan was pro-abortion when he was a governor. Jerry Falwell wasn't in the 70s, before the mid 70s, preaching against abortion. It's just not true. The Southern Baptist Convention, I believe, even had language in their charters at one point about access to abortion if aborting the baby would maintain the emotional or physical health of the mother. It's completely fabricated. Y'all have all fallen for a white supremacist ruse. I am so sorry to tell y'all. You're in with the racists. Anyways. In addition to that, we hear doctors say over and over again that these abortion bans prevent them from offering their patients optimal health care. There was a podcast recently from the New York Times where an OBGYN, I thought it was interesting that they mentioned that she was biracial. She was a South Carolina biracial gynecologist who moved from South Carolina after a horrible traumatic experience she had when she had to perform an abortion on a preteen girl after the girl was sexually assaulted. After she performed the abortion, which the whole thing was very traumatic, she was intimidated and interrogated by police because South Carolina's laws give police the ability to treat any doctor who performs an abortion like they are potentially a criminal. Who wants to do that? There have been very moving long form pieces in The Atlantic. I've read one. In The New Yorker, I've read one. Is there anywhere else? I'm sure from the New York Times as well. The Atlantic, The New Yorker. Well, those are the big ones. There's a big one from The Atlantic, what abortion bans do to doctors. There's another one, more recent run in The New Yorker. Take some time to read them. You know, I should get an affiliate code for The New Yorker because I promote it so much. But the anguish that these doctors express in these write-ups, in these interviews, because they don't want to hurt their patients. They want to save their patients. They want to do what's right, but they also don't want to be imprisoned. It's shameful. I understand the allure of the American exceptionalism talk, but America's not so exceptional when you're letting people bleed out, as Harris underscored at that debate, when you're letting women bleed out in hospital parking lots because the ER doctors have to call up the lawyers to make sure that it's legal to perform a DNC. It's not super exceptional to me. And anyways, that brings us to the Harris moment.
And the young women that I talked to,
Honestly, I feel really excited to vote for a woman for the first time. She is concerned about women's rights. That's like, at the forefront.
they had felt so energized by these issues that we've been discussing.
Just getting on TikTok, you're seeing everyone ramped up. I don't think that it had felt that exciting since Obama, to be honest. I do feel, honestly, just a bit excited to be a part of history.
Okay, so both parties are tapping into these big.
Yeah, so that brings us to the pro Harris moment. It was interesting and I think expected. You can't have people on there. You can't have Kimberly's on there being like, look, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit, okay? That would not make for a good podcast on this because am I so excited? No. But I'm so excited to vote for the person that I know is going to do the least harm. I'm so excited to hopefully prevent Donald Trump from not having a second term. That's what I'm so excited about. And we will see next week if the approximately 70% of young women voters casting a ballot for Harris will be enough. I really don't know. I really don't know. All of uh, the varied political substacks that I read, they really don't know. I'm very nervous. I follow all kinds of people in order to get obscure analysis about what might happen next week. Yesterday, I went down. Oh, I should say, that's all I really have to say about that. This is going to be me riffing for a minute. Yesterday, I went down a rabbit hole and I came across a YouTube channel with 700 subscribers that is run by a climate activist who runs an environmental voter organization. And he was going through the early voting numbers of his organization's target and comparing the early voting of the people who say that climate is their number one political issue with the baseline early voting numbers in the different swing states. That's how sick I am. That's how sick I am. And he was comparing overall early voting and he compared first time climate voters to the baseline of first time voters. And that is supposed to give an indication of how democratic or progressive the different voter bases, the voter turnout is. And I will say, what he presented made me feel optimistic. But who knows? But who knows? He also broke it down by gender, how are more female voters voting early than in 2020. And according to his analysis, yes. So that's good. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to parse the data and break it down. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen? I don't know. Oh, the other thing, I'm sorry, I don't want to get look, woo, I almost went down an existential dread spiral. I almost completely trailed off. I was almost in my own world, okay? I almost disassociated on y'all live on air. All I'm saying is the Trump presidency was, y'all don't remember being stressed? Y'all's cortisol wasn't up from 2016 to 2020? Y'all don't remember that? I don't want my cortisol to be up. But I will say, and I said this to my boyfriend the other day, I'm old now. I mean, not old, but not young. So I'm at a point in my life where I'm kind of like in the cruising part of my life. So I can probably opt out every day of the emotional, up and down. But I do feel really, I don't want people who are not in the cruising part of their lives to have to experience that. It was a bad time. It was it was a bad time. It was chaos every day. You guys, like, this is what I don't understand. Look, I get the anti-imperial girlies. Don't get me wrong, okay? I get it. But every day it was. Anyways, I also live in Texas. Vote for Colin Allred. Do I think Colin Allred is going to win? No, I don't. I don't know. But we at least want to scare the shit out of Ted Cruz. And there's all sorts of local ballot measures in Dallas that we need to make sure don't get implemented. Vote no on those ballot measures in Dallas. All sorts of local stuff happening. Anyways, it was a hot mess. My cortisol is chilling. I'm tuning out until the 5th. I was living in NYC during COVID BLM protests. Black people were getting mowed down. Cops were planting bricks for riots outside my apartment. It was so much chaos. And I want to be really clear that me pinpointing the enormity of the overwhelm and the stress of a Trump presidency does not mean that I'm saying everything is great and perfect and hunky-dory during a Biden presidency. But the level of extreme chaos is just different. And do y'all not remember? But some people want chaos. I actually get it. I get that people believe that the chaos is going to lead to something different and new. And if I believed that, I would be with you. I just don't believe that. I just don't. And I'm just not sure why y'all believe that. finally, the final thing is when I was doing all of my reminiscing back down memory lane about the start of For Harriet, it gave me the idea that For Harriet started as a blog. I started it in my college dorm room in 2011. Yeah. And with it was great and amazing. And I actually stopped publishing the blog after Facebook changed the algorithms in a way that completely destroyed the platform as a mechanism of distribution for publishers of every size. I was so pissed off about that because I'd spent so much time strategizing and planning and recruiting people in order to get the Facebook page for Harriet up to 500,000 likes. And I just thought, I was just so pissed off at that. I just like, oh, I'm going to do something completely different. So I started making videos. But now we are back in the Substack era. And I'm going to reboot the blog, relaunch the blog. The archive of For Harriet is at archive.forharriet.com. That's where you can go to see everything that was published from all of the different writers over the years. And I'm now accepting submissions for the relaunch. Of course, it's going to be paid. Back in the old days when I was broke and I didn't have any money, I'm so grateful that people were willing to do things for free, but we don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to do that anymore. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. I'm grateful to not have to exploit people like that anymore. So if you are interested in For Harriet, the publication is for Black women and people who identify as Black women. If you are interested in writing, op-ed, essay, interview, any kind of creative work, hit me up, send me an email, and we can talk and we can negotiate. And relaunch is Q1 2025. It's going to be 2025. That's insane. What's going on? Yeah, we're in the Substack era where people are reading again. That's good. People are tired of algorithms. I'm tired of algorithms. We don't have to do this. We can go back to writing and reading again. It's going to be a great time. So feel free to hit me up. Any other non-binaries, yes, can also contribute. Yes. Oh my God. Have y'all seen this is a whole nother video. We're going to end it here. The anti-trans ads. I don't know if this is directly from the Trump campaign or if it's from a super PAC, but they're like, Donald Trump is for you. Kamala is for they, them. I'm laughing not because bigotry is funny, but because it's so absurd that is the kind of naked bigotry that these campaigns are trafficking in. And it's working. I live in Texas, so I see lots of anti-Colin Allred ads. The Colin Allred ad that I see all the time is about Colin Allred supporting men playing girl sports. No men play girl sports. There are trans children who play sports. Children play sports. Men don't play sports against girls. Bro, it's like we living through segregation again. It's actually crazy. I know the black bigots are gonna hate that I compared anti-trans bigotry to anti-black bigotry, but the brazenness of it, we're going to look back on this election cycle and these trans ads and the effectiveness of them and be so disgusted. Well, I am, because I'm going to be on the right side of history. It's appalling. Appalling. It is nasty and mean. We're talking about 1 to 2% of a population that you have poured tens of millions of dollars into vilifying and demonizing. I do not, I will never be able to understand the machinations of a mind who wants to do that. It is evil to me. Just evil. Because you know what you're doing. You're putting these people in harm's way. Kids. Talking about trans children. At any rate, that's all. Oh, last call for the abortion. I'm so sorry. This is good. Shout out to the freaking embroidery. It's good. Adorable. I literally just bought another one because it's good. It's really good. At shopknf.com, because abortion is healthcare. My mom said that I can't say F Ted Cruz because I live in Texas, so I won't. And I'm not allowed to say I hate Ted Cruz. I'm not allowed to say F Ted Cruz, and I'm not allowed to say I hate Ted Cruz because I live in Texas. So, but we should do what we can to vote Ted Cruz out. I will talk to you guys later. Bye.